a century burning fossil fuels. Still ain't no shortages. I ain't saying I'm Neo, but I'm nothing short of a Morpheus. Fuck, thought this was a globe. I gotta check my coordinates. You could blame my disorderly conduct on my subordinates. If it ain't no Coriolis, who's to blame for New Orleans? Why the poorest people always get extorted by corporate giants? We don't boycott, we buy in, and I find it unfortunate. Yeah, me plus you plus her, that's four. Now bring your worst and
hello everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Flat Earth Podcast. I'm Curious Jay alongside Dave from Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, where we're going to talk for about an hour about nothing but flat Earth each and every week right here on the podcast. Dave, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Excited to start this podcast focused on the flat Earth, because that's the number one topic in my book.
Same here. We wanted to launch the podcast not to discount anything on YouTube, but to kind of fill in the gaps, if you will.
Yeah, people like to listen when they're driving, when they're commuting on the train, when they're walking, and not stream video. And podcasts are the way to go. So this is audio only. There is no visuals. We're going to paint pictures in your mind, hopefully, and clearly. And easy access to flat Earth content when you're on the move.
Exactly. I was in the airport just the other day, and I had flat Earth on the mind as usual. I wanted to listen to some flat Earth stuff, but I didn't want to watch a video because I was going through and catching trains and going to the gates and that sort of thing. And that's the kind of time that would be perfect for the Flat Earth Podcast, and that's why we're doing it. Hopefully we'll have a lot of the Flat Earth content providers from YouTube here on the show, some guests, maybe even some guests that don't get into Flat Earth, and we can have a discussion with them as well coming up soon.
Definitely some people that don't believe in flat Earth, people that are against it, and people that have no idea that it's even a subject. We'll bring them in and we'll talk to them and hear their questions and answer those questions the best that we can and see where the conversation goes.
Exactly. So that's what to expect here on the Flat Earth Podcast. Coming up a little bit later in this particular episode, we're going to talk about one of the hottest topics in the last couple of weeks anyway, and that is the solar eclipse 2017. Which direction is it going? That sort of thing. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first, Dave, for those who haven't heard your wake-up story, tell us, how did you wake up to the flat Earth?
So I was doing a podcast, a conspiracy podcast called Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. Did it weekly for 3 years. And into the last year, I kept getting messages from listeners, a few listeners, saying, check this flat Earth stuff out. And I would just delete them. And it got so annoying, I banned them from social media, some of them, because I wouldn't even watch a 2-minute video. And then finally, another researcher, Sophia Smallstorm, I was having a conversation with her, and she mentioned the flat Earth. She said, for all I know, we were talking about how everything is such a deception. She said, it's possible that we live on a flat Earth. And, I couldn't believe what I heard, because I'd been thinking about this and hearing this. And she said, yeah, look into it. And I started looking. I did as most people do. Found Mark Sargent's clues, Eric Dubay's 200 proofs. I found a bunch of videos, and after I couldn't shake it off. So then I went in to debunk it. And that's the number one way to become a flat earther. If you seriously try to debunk it, and rather than just saying, oh, it's nonsense, I don't even have to look into it, which what most people say, there's no coming out the other end without realizing that we are not on a spinning ball.
And did you bring it up to the guys on the podcast that you were doing it with?
I brought it up offline just a little bit, and they were adamantly against it. And after knowing it for 3 months, I started bringing it up on the show, and the fans went insane. They said that I've lost my mind. Mike, the other co-host, the comedian, he's basically the troll of the show. He said that I was trying to ruin the credibility of the podcast,
right.
And that's what I was afraid of. That all of the work I had done on all of these other deceptions that have been cast over society would be discredited if this was wrong. But looking into it, I realized that it wasn't wrong. And over time, some of the people that have attacked me back then are sending me notes now thanking me for standing strong and making them look.
I've never understood the PSYOP reasoning. You know, I've heard it a lot from people who do believe in conspiracies, but not the flat earth, you know, where flat earth is the area they just won't go, where they immediately say, oh, it's a PSYOP to discredit the truth movement, and a PSYOP to discredit that or the other.
I thought the same
really
thing.
Got into that. I've never bought into that.
It sounded like something to discredit it until you look into it, and then you realize it's reality. And when you really look into it and find out, you know, the people that look into it realize they didn't know anything about the heliocentric model. People think they know about the heliocentric model, but they don't know anything. They know that it's a globe because their kindergarten teacher told her it was a globe.
That's right. That's right. And I quickly went through the same process. But yeah, everyone who thinks, the people who immediately object, I think when they start researching this, find out just how little they did know.
And then when you find out and you look back, you know, the point where we are right now, when you look back at what we used to believe, it's almost embarrassing, or it is embarrassing. It's like, how did I ever believe that nonsense?
Yeah, agreed. So Dave, it took you a few months to start bringing it up on the podcast, and you did so. At that point, when you were bringing it up, were you completely flat Earth, or were you still globe skeptic? You know, how were you approaching it when you would mention it to people?
I was just bringing up point after point, things that did not work on the globe. And what I found out is things fall into three categories: works on a globe, works on a flat earth, or works on both. And what I was seeing is nothing fits into the first category, works on a globe, that doesn't also work on a flat earth. Have to this day have not found a single thing that falls into that category. A ball earth believer, or somebody that's just hasn't looked into it, that believes we live on a ball, will say there's thousands of things that fall into that category, but they can't come up with one.
Right. They can come up with thousands of things that they like to cite as reasons we know we're on a globe. But you're right. None of them are exclusive reasons that couldn't also work on a flat earth.
Right. You know, people say seasons, that proves the globe. If you look at the real model, seasons prove the flat earth.
Yeah. When Sophia Smallstrom mentioned this to you, was this just a comment she was making, throwing it out there, or had she actually been researching the flat earth?
She had been talking with some people about it and had looked into it a little bit. It's not her thing, or at least it wasn't at that time. And she said that she is having problems with the globe, and that was enough for me to finally look.
Wow.
When I started, I would say I wasn't a flat earther. I was oh my God, we don't live on a globe. It's something else. And flat is the only thing I can come up with.
Yeah. Was there anything that stands out? I know most of us have many things that we like to cite as our reasons, but do you remember early on, maybe when you were watching the Clues or one of the other videos, one of the biggest arguments or points that stuck out to you?
There was a bunch, but the airplane routes really made sense to me. You know, flying from Chile to Australia, they went all the way up to Dubai and all the way back down. It made no sense, but it was on the flat Earth map, or one of the flat Earth maps. It's a straight line, and that made sense to me at that time. I was under the belief that the direct flights from Santiago to New Zealand did not exist. But since then, we found out that they do exist. There's not many of them. They fly at different altitudes. Their times vary tremendously. And the route that they take and the speeds that they go are not what they tell us.
Yeah. And I think it was Jaron who said it in one of his videos that, if they're lying about a distance, then you can't really trust the speed.
Are you speaking of Jaron from the Jaronism YouTube channel, for those of you that are new to Flat Earth?
Yes. Oh, yeah. If anybody's checking out this podcast who hasn't tuned in, you're right, Dave. Check out Jaronism. Jeranism on YouTube because, man, if you're just getting into this, he has got a ton of stuff for you. He'll keep you busy for a while.
A long time. He does amazing all topics, but NASA he's completely destroyed. You know, I love space, Star Wars. I love, all of that. The secret space program I was into. They were hiding the real footage of the moon because, there may be aliens up there. I was a complete heliocentric moron. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. A lot of us were. I mean, we were like, most of us were really. But you mentioned actually to me a while back. So you were actually on board and trusted NASA prior to this.
It's because I never looked into it. I had my awakening was a little in reverse. Most people realize NASA is lying, and then that leads them to the flat Earth. I was diving into flat Earth stuff and didn't even look at NASA. And then I was in a hangout and somebody brought up something about NASA. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you believe NASA is real? You believe it went to the moon? And I'm like, well, yeah, but the footage. And they started laughing at me. And then I looked and it took 10 minutes. NASA is the biggest joke of all.
Yeah.
They've never sent anything into space except your imagination.
Yeah. Yeah.
So planets, people are like, what about the other planets? Why are we flat and the other planets are round? Well, the only thing we know about planets comes from NASA and Disney. And right now, Disney is far more credible than NASA.
So true.
It's so true. It's sad.
Yeah, it really is. Were you able after a few months to tell people around you, friends, that sort of thing?
So I woke up to the flat Earth, was it in early 2015? It's now 2017. And just recently, I've been putting more and more on my real friends. Not that, the flat earthers aren't friends, just my personal friends in my physical life that I see all the time. I've been putting some real good flat earth stuff up there because now I'm ready to answer any questions and everybody is quiet. Nobody is saying anything. And I'm okay with that because years and years ago, I started posting chemtrail stuff relentlessly and some people attacked me. Many people never said anything. And now I go out and I'll see a friend that, I haven't seen in a long time or whatever. And they'll look up at the sky and they'll be like, hey, look, they're spraying the skies. You're right. And they never once commented on my Facebook stuff, but they saw it. And they weren't afraid to say something to me because they knew that I knew. And so I've woken up, is that the right word? Awakened? I've awakened. I've awoken.
I've woken up.
I've woken. That's what I said first. All right. So I got it. I've woken up many people that way. So I'm posting some good flat earth short videos. And I know that people are watching them, and hopefully they'll be brave enough to start having a conversation about them with me.
Yeah, I love your channel, and I know many, many others do as well. Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole.
DITRH. It's not.
DITRH.
Yeah, it stands for Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, but the YouTube is DITRH, which stands for Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole.
Following announcement has been paid for by
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
You want to leave a digital voicemail for us? Head over to theflatearthpodcast.com and click on the blue link that reads, got a question? Send us a message.
You can do it from your iPhone or from your computer. First time you do it on your cellular phone, you'll have to download a little app. But after that, you can leave us all kinds of messages. If you want to be anonymous, you can make up a name, make up an email address. We don't care. We just want to hear what you have to say.
We'll do our best to play or answer these questions and comments on future episodes right here on the Flat Earth Podcast. Download the SpeakPipe app and check us out at theflatearthpodcast.com.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
The Flat Earth Conference 2017 takes place this November from Raleigh, North Carolina. Tickets are sold out right now, but visit their website and get on the waiting list.
If you don't have a ticket, you can get on their waiting list and maybe get a ticket, or just head down. There's lots of people heading down to an adjacent hotel where they'll be live streaming in an auditorium and lots of outside stuff happening. A big Flat Earth hangout.
Head over to fe2017.com now.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
And if you want to contribute to the massive Flat Earth billboard that's going up down in Raleigh, North Carolina, head over to the website, flatearthpodcast.com, click on the link that sends you over to the billboard campaign.
The billboard is 14 feet tall by 48 feet wide. It'll be the biggest Flat Earth billboard to date. It'll be running for a month before the conference and ending the Sunday after the conference.
So head over to the GoFundMe page, throw in $1, $5, $10, whatever you got, whatever you can do, so that we can get this monster billboard up in Raleigh this October, 1 month prior to the conference.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
Hey, this is Marty Leeds from MartyLeeds33.com, and you are listening to the Flat Earth Podcast.
How about you, Jay? What is your story? How did you get into the Flat Earth?
Probably a little bit later than yours. I guess the first time it was sent over to me from a friend was, I want to say, maybe in the fall of 2015. I laughed at it as everyone else did. But prior to that, going into that, I'll say this. I didn't believe the moon landing. I had already been very, very skeptical of the NASA as it pertains to the moon. I didn't know why. Was it so that they won the space race, or was it because, one of the logical things that I'd come up with years ago was when I would talk to someone about the moon landing, I'd say, do you really believe that they would broadcast this live for the country to see? I mean, what if something blew up? What if they took off and disappeared into space? What if there was an alien? What if they would never just say, okay, let's broadcast it live? They would have pre-recorded it. It was one of these missions that they had to do. They had to win. They had to land. So I always told people they pre-recorded it, and maybe they did land on the moon. I don't know. But what they showed us is crap. So that was kind of my way of, I guess playing the fence. I don't believe this moon landing footage, but okay, but maybe they can go to space. Maybe they can go to the moon. And then what was really interesting was at the end of 2014, I think it was, I don't know how, but somebody had turned me on to an interview with Brooks Agnew talking about the hollow Earth. And again, it's anything, I guess, with the Earth itself just kind of invokes a laughter response. And I laughed at it. I was like, hollow Earth. And I watched it and I heard the account of the supposed diary of Admiral Byrd's that his son found. Have you heard all that?
Yes.
Okay, so I read through that and, of course, found that it's not exactly 100% credible. Some say it is, some say it isn't. But the jury's still out, I guess, is the nice way to say that. But what I found interesting about the hollow Earth theory was that I did find convincing or eyebrow raising was the North Pole, South Pole stuff. And when they would, explain hey, look at the footage that they do show us from NASA. Why is it always this? Why is it always that? And so I was really intrigued by, there is something mysterious about the poles. And so this was probably in December of 2014. And, I picked it up for a little bit, looked into it, laughed, said, oh, well, NASA, you never know what they're up to. And then I put it away. So fast forward to the 2015, and now it's Flat Earth that someone's sending me a video for. I laughed, but when I finally looked at it, kind of like you, one of the things that hit me right away was the flights. I saw a comment on Facebook. A friend of mine posted a Flat Earth video, and it may have been one of ODD's. It may have been, I think it was Mark Sargent's Clues. I didn't even want to watch it, but I saw a mutual friend, he had commented on the video, and I could see his comment. It said, well, I think it's all crap, but the stuff at marker 614 or whatever is very compelling. Well, okay, I'm curious. So now I play the video. I don't even watch the intro. I just scan forward to the marker he mentioned, 614 or whatever it was. And I think it was Sargent, but it was someone talking about how the flight paths don't make sense. And I watched that and I thought, that is very compelling. But this, we could debunk this in 5 seconds, or, this isn't going to take long to research this. So I pause it. I go to Expedia or, one of the other flight searches, and I see that you can go nonstop, Santiago to Sydney or whatever it was. And I went, oh, there you go. And I disregarded Flat Earth for probably 2 or 3 months. So it was kind of a false it had it shot at me. I swung it off and went about my way. And then a couple months later, one other friend who I never dreamed would suggest me watching a flat earth video said something to me, and I said, okay, fine. He said, just watch the whole thing. Just watch the whole thing. I said, all right. So I'm watching it, and I get 10 minutes in, Dave, and they start talking about the flat earth, the curvature formula. And I stopped dead in my tracks because for 3.5 years, several years ago, I used to work on offshore oil rigs. And we would go out into the Gulf of Mexico, sometimes the Atlantic Ocean, and we'd be on a platform rig. And when you're staying in a bunk, you're at the lower level of the rigs. You're at the bottom. So you might be 20, 30 feet off the sea level. But I remember specifically being 40 miles out into the Gulf, and you could see the lights from the city, a nearby city that was at the shoreline. And then I would go up top sometimes, and I would jump rope on the heliport. I'd bring binoculars, that sort of thing. And you could definitely, without a doubt, see further than what this flat earth video was trying to imply, was this earth curvature deal. So I said to myself, they got to be wrong. There is no way. I mean, the formula itself, 8 inches per mile squared, has to be wrong. So I sat down and I tried to backwards math it, reverse engineer it. I studied a little bit of trigonometry, spherical trigonometry, and I started trying to figure out doing it the long way with the Pythagorean theorem and that sort of thing. And to my astonishment, I couldn't disprove the formula. And I'd say 3 weeks later, I was like, all right, here we go. And I started watching the rest of these videos. But that was kind of the first thing that really stopped me in my tracks there.
It with all of the research, all of the deceptions that I had been covering from 9/11 to the Boston bombing and everything else, I thought, all right, I've got a picture of our reality. I see the deceptions. Then the flat earth came around, which trumps everything 100 times over. And I'm wondering what's going to come next. It's like today, or not today, just the other day, we had Chester from Lincoln Park was, supposedly killed himself. And then we find out that he's very likely the son of John Podesta. Have you seen that?
I have seen that. And I don't know what to say other than the appearance wise. Oh my goodness. He looks exactly like him. It's really astonishing.
It's pretty compelling, some of the stuff there. We'll put a link on the Facebook page if anybody wants to look it up.
Ooh, man, yeah, that's pretty crazy. But no, I think it was probably when I was going through the curvature formula research.
Curvature is the big one. You can't find curvature. There's no curvature. The Bolivian salt flats, the lake in Alaska that's 300 miles long, those prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that,
or a dado.
Yeah, or a dado, either way, that the Earth is flat. The salt flats are proven geographically flat, and when they're covered with water, they're covered with water. If they were geographically flat, then the ends would stick out, or wherever you want to call the top, anything away from the top would stick out, and it doesn't.
That like I say, that was the thing that hooked me and really got me into this. And back in the day when I would work offshore, we had a lot of time on our hands out there on those rigs. We'd have the internet and we'd have a lot of time. And when I would find a new topic to research, a controversial topic or a conspiracy theory or whatever you want to call it, what I would do is I would channel back to my debate days. So in high school and college, I used to debate. And one thing you would do, which I loved about debate, and I think that more people ought to do this, is we were given a topic every 6 weeks in school, and they'd say, here's your topic for this 6 weeks. It's the federal government should control all of the country's educational system. So you would spend the next week or two writing a case, both for and against that statement. Then you would go to a tournament, and you would go to a room, you would have an opponent in the room with you and a judge. The judge would flip a coin. Let's say you win the coin toss. Dave, what do you want to be? Dave picks affirmative. Well, then I'm forced to go negative. And what it did was it made me learn to build a case for something that even though I didn't agree with it. And so I do that nowadays in my research. And I used to do it with things like 9/11, the Kennedy assassination, that sort of thing. Write a case for it and against it. And don't cheat. Really, really try. And I think that's the best way for me anyway to analyze what is true and what isn't. So they got me with this curvature formula, and I went, oh my gosh. And I grabbed a piece of paper and I was like, this is going to take forever because this encompasses so many subtopics, like that you're going to have to look into when you're writing the case for the flat or the globe. It's like, well, there's the stars, there's the sun, there's the moon, atmosphere, there's curvature, there's satellites, there's just about anything you can think of. I mean, radio transmissions, how does that work? Offshore drilling, horizontal drilling, is that affected? Could that work? And so essentially I love when I've heard you say it on interviews, and you said it earlier in the show, where things fit into 3 categories: works on a globe, works on a flat, or works on both. And that's such a great way to say or sum up what I was essentially doing. I was trying to write a case for the globe and the flat, but I realized there were so many topics. And as I started doing it, what I started realizing was like the best case scenario that the globe could hope for was a tie. That's all they were getting, was a tie on some of these subcategories, but some of them just didn't even work on a globe.
There's so many things that we'll get into in other episodes that just absolutely don't work on a globe, not even close. And we're going to be talking about that shortly, about the eclipse, which does not work on a spinning globe.
Right.
It's so simple, but it's also, they never taught us to think that way. In school, we were taught what to think and taught to regurgitate nonsense. They never taught us how to think about these things. They never taught us these things.
Yeah. D Marble mentioned in his video rant that he put out the other day something that I've also said almost word for word to other people, and that is school, college, higher education, they've taught us what to think, not how to think.
Correct.
Nobody gets awarded in school for having an open mind and figuring out new ways to figure out the math problem. It's do it this way, regurgitate it, memorize it, regurgitate it for the test, and move on.
And that's it. They indoctrinate us into the globe when we're too little to challenge them. When we're in kindergarten, when your first day in school, they bring you up to the globe and they tell you where you live.
Yeah.
And they tell you, and if you question it, they're like, oh, gravity. And you that goes in. That's a core belief. Which Nazi scientist said, give me a kid when they're a child until they're 12, and I'll have control over them their whole life, or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it's true. You can, if you have the kid from that small, you can put core beliefs in their head that are very difficult to change.
Yeah, it's so true. What was really, I guess, impactful on my journey early on was the fact that while I was researching this for myself and learning all of these things and watching these videos and then trying to fact check everything simultaneously, as that's happening in my life, I'm also sending kids into school for the first time. And that alone, just kind of going through it so recently, it was such a wake-up call to just how real or how strong this globe indoctrination really is.
Yeah, amazing. Every movie, every television show, it's everywhere, especially the kids shows. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I heard on a Flat Earth video recently someone saying, well, you can't get to 6th grade without believing in the ball. And I said, you can't get through kindergarten. I mean, and I'm serious, because now my kids in preschool were coming home before kindergarten. Were coming home and telling me that No, the moon goes around the earth. So no, you can't, sixth grade, that'd be a miracle. You can't get to first grade without having all this stuff ironed into the back of your mind.
They teach us the nonsense of astronomy. Astronomy is complete and total nonsense. And that's I was into astronomy. Every single thing about astronomy is nonsense. And astrology, which I laughed at my entire life, there's something to that. We live in this system where the lights, the heavenly bodies above us, affect our life in a major way.
Yeah, Dave, I was also really big into astronomy, documentaries about space, the stars, all the stuff they would tell us in these announcements on Facebook feeds and History Channel shows. I was so into all that space stuff. And now I'm the same way. I look at it now and I go, yeah, it's 100% fiction. It's all science fiction.
It's just lies. It's none of it is true. The sun is not a burning ball of hydrogen. Stars are not giant suns in the distance. The moon, who knows what that is? Is it a projection? It's not I don't think it's a rock in space. It could be, but I seriously doubt it. The earth isn't spinning. Gravity is a lie. Satellites. We're going to talk about satellites. I had a hard time with that one. I'm like, come on. But if you really think about it, satellites don't make any sense at all. I used to, Arthur C. Clarke, the story was he wrote about satellites before they existed. And I was like, the guy's a prophet. The guy is a he's like Nostradamus. He knew the future. No, he was just put there to program us to accept satellites.
Yeah. Or they just said, that's a great idea. That backs up the book.
I think he was put out there on purpose just to program us. Matt Damon is on the Mars movie. He saved himself by growing potatoes. And then 6 months later, NASA says they're going to grow potatoes on Mars. And everyone's like, oh, that's cool. That'll work. That's good.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. It's amazing how easily we are programmed when something is shown to us. If you don't consciously judge it, it goes into your subconscious as a thing. And then when you hear something, every single thing in your life that happens, you have to make sense of it. Otherwise, you become disoriented. Like if a pencil fell off the desk on the other side of the room right now, you'd be like, my cat did it, the wind blew, a mouse hit it, the vibration made it roll off because the counter's crooked. You'd have to come up with some explanation how that happened. So when a new concept is thrown at you, your brain scrambles for any little piece of information. And if in previous movies and television shows and news that these things are slipped in there as unimportant little facts, unimportant little things, they're all stored in your head and you grab them and say, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's how the Harley guy in 9/11, when he told the story at the highest rated television moment in the history of the world, when everyone is traumatized looking for an explanation, he told us what happened. And all of the pre-programming from all of the movies, Back to the Future, the Supertramp album, everything
snapped into place.
Those little things, formulate as hey, that makes sense, and it worked. I have a video on the DITRH YouTube channel, Back to the Future, and not Back to the Future. It was Danny Glover and
Lethal Weapon.
Lethal Weapon. And
Mel Gibson.
Where the house blew up. Just before it blew up, in the background, a jet airliner was flying by the house in the distance, so it was really small. And when the nose touched the chimney, the house blew up. And I remember seeing that back in the 80s going, what did that plane have to do with it? And I just wrote it off. But then that image is linked to 9/11. It's unbelievable. Check out that video on my channel, 9/11.
Wow, that's crazy. I've never heard of the Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, when they get out of the car too, it goes right by a parking sign that says 9-11.
No way.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, the pre-programming is crazy. You brought up the Arthur C. Clarke and the satellites. I remember in my journey, one of the things that kind of I visited early on, I visited the satellites in my research. And I guess my conclusion when I visited that was, well, it's pretty darn sketchy. I mean, yeah, there's really nothing to prove it. It could be anything. They could be there or they could not be there. I think I scored it as a tie to be nice. But I was thinking in my head, this is fishy. And I said, well, wait a minute. Satellites, I learned about this in school. Russia got the first satellite up before we put a man on the moon, which is why we put a man on the moon, because of the whole space race. And I know Mark Sargent, I think in his clues, says something about the whole space race could have been just a dog and pony show. And I thought, no way.
We were emotionally tied to the Cold War. But let me ask you a question. How many battles between America and Russia were there in the Cold War?
Right. There was nothing. It was just a Cold
Nothing.
War.
It was nothing.
Yeah.
And Sputnik was a lie to start a space race because they're going to be able to drop nuclear bombs on us. Another thing that probably doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. I visited that and I looked, and when I really looked into Sputnik, and this is probably about 2 or 3 months into my research, I went into Sputnik, the satellite that Russia had put up, but I realized that, wait a second. Yeah, everyone on Earth, I remember this, saying that people could see it from the ground. You could look up.
They could see it from the ground. It's the size of a bowling ball, right?
Well, it's a little bigger than a bowling ball, but not much. I mean, I think it was like 20 inches in diameter.
You couldn't see that at the end of 2 football fields.
Correct. And I'm like, wait, what was the height? And it supposedly orbited the Earth, about 100, 150 miles up, something like that. I mean, it's 2 guys holding it. It's about the size of a couple basketballs, maybe. Basketball and a half. And I'm like, are you serious? Absolutely not. And then I just went back over to my satellite column and I'm like, yeah, BS.
Following announcement has been paid for by
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
You want to leave a digital voicemail for us? Head over to theflatearthpodcast.com and click on the blue link that reads, got a question? Send us a message.
You can do it from your iPhone or from your computer. First time you do it on your cellular phone, you'll have to download a little app. But after that, you can leave us all kinds of messages. If you want to be anonymous, you can make up a name, make up an email address. We don't care. We just want to hear what you have to say.
We'll do our best to play or answer these questions and comments on future episodes right here on the Flat Earth Podcast. Download the SpeakPipe app and check us out at theflatearthpodcast.com.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
The Flat Earth Conference 2017 takes place this November from Raleigh, North Carolina. Tickets are sold out right now, but visit their website and get on the waiting list.
If you don't have a ticket, you can get on their waiting list and maybe get a ticket, or just head down. There's lots of people heading down to an adjacent hotel where they'll be live streaming in an auditorium and lots of outside stuff happening. A big Flat Earth hangout.
Head over to fe2017.com now.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
And if you want to contribute to the massive Flat Earth billboard that's going up down in Raleigh, North Carolina, head over to the website, flatearthpodcast.com, click on the link that sends you over to the billboard campaign.
The billboard is 14 feet tall by 48 feet wide. It'll be the biggest Flat Earth billboard to date. It'll be running for a month up before the conference and ending the Sunday after the conference.
So head over to the GoFundMe page, throw in $1, $5, $10, whatever you got, whatever you can do, so that we can get this monster billboard up in Raleigh this October, 1 month prior to the conference.
The Flat Earth
Podcast.
Hey, this is Marty Leeds from MartyLeeds33.com, and you are listening to the Flat Earth Podcast.
Hey, speaking of satellites in space, let's talk about our satellite, the moon, and what it's going to be doing next month before we run out of time.
Yeah. So the big topic going on right now is the solar eclipse coming up August 21st. And the Potter's Clay dropped a video about 4 or 5 days ago talking about the direction of the solar eclipse. As you may know already, it's heading into the U.S. up there in the Oregon area, and then it's swooping down, across the U.S., going in an easterly direction, headed off to the top of Georgia and then off into the Atlantic. Potter's Clay pointed out a great issue here. It's going the wrong way, Dave.
The shadow is going from west to east, which some people will think it does make sense because as the sun overtakes the moon from our perspective, the shadow will go in the opposite direction. So if you have let's say the moon is over California or Colorado or somewhere, and the sun is going to the west from our perspective, it's supposedly that the earth is turning. The shadow will start out in the ocean. As the sun goes over the moon, the shadow will be directly down, let's say Oregon or wherever it is. And as the sun overtakes the moon, as it moves out to California, the shadow would be eastward. We can all agree on that, correct?
Yeah.
But the problem is the earth is spinning 27 times faster than the sun and moon are supposedly moving.
Or that the moon is moving.
Then the moon is moving, correct. The sun relative to us that motion isn't even factored because we're moving relative to the sun in the heliocentric model. And that would make the shadow, we'd be spinning away. The earth would be spinning to the east. So the shadow should go the other direction as far as the ground is concerned.
Yeah. When I watched the Potter's Clay video, I said to myself, could it have been like this obvious? And I remembered a few months ago, someone somewhere brought up it's going the wrong direction or whatever, either in a comment thread or a video or something that I came across. And I think the answer that the Globe side provided was something really quick and simple, but I don't think I thought much into it. I didn't really analyze it because I went, oh, okay, and moved on. And I kind of thought it had been covered. And then in the video that the Potter's Clay put out, he challenges saying, I know what they say. They say it's due to the different speed of the moon going around, but I went to go look for an animation, and lo and behold, to his amazement, the NASA animation and the few that are out there from different space sites, they don't match up to reality, and they don't. There's some of the animations where the earth spins the wrong way. The one that I saw where they actually got it to look, it's like a pinpoint little shadow going across the U.S., the way that it's planning to go. It's obvious that the sun has to be moving right to left to get that to happen. The sun doesn't move.
They have the sun moving. They have the moon moving faster than the earth is spinning.
Yeah.
In one of them, they have the earth spinning in the wrong direction to make it work. Here's the one. You talk about the shadow of the moon. How wide is it on the earth? The totality?
It's like 100 miles wide.
Right. And how wide is the moon supposed to be?
2,000.
Supposedly 2,000. So how does something get smaller? Here's the experiment everybody could do, because some people just can't visualize it. Get a golf ball. Get a spotlight on one side of the room and shine it on the wall, and then get the golf ball and hold it on that opposite wall from the light and look at the shadow. It will be the size of the golf ball. Now move that golf ball towards the light, and what happens to that shadow, Jay?
It gets bigger.
It gets bigger and it gets fuzzier.
That's right. Every single time. And this is one of those topics that, if I was making a list of things that I want science to give me proof of, this is a big one, because nowhere, anywhere have I seen demonstrated with a real light and a real object where someone can make the shadow of an object, the moon, whatever, appear to be 20 times smaller and super, super defined. It's physically impossible. It only happens in one place, folks, and that is during an eclipse. And we should all be skeptical of things that can't be demonstrated other than where they're supposedly happening.
There's so many things wrong with it. The size of the shadow, the direction that it's going in. There's a lunar eclipse a couple weeks before, I think on August 7th. And that is one of the big things that scientists say proves that the Earth is a ball because of the curved shadow on the moon. How do you get a unfuzzy shadow at that distance? You can't. You wouldn't even see the edge of the shadow. It would be a faded mess.
Yeah.
Especially with an atmosphere on it too. So you don't even have a sharp edge to make a shadow.
In fact, this is how I would say it to science, Dave. I would say, I understand your explanation for that small shadow. I understand your penumbra and umbra, and I get it. I've seen your diagram.
I don't get it. I don't accept it at all.
But I don't accept it because I've never once seen that in my life. Please show me any, I don't care to what scale you put it, any example where you can take something that's 2,000 miles wide or 2 feet wide and, make it half an inch of a shadow, make the shadow only half an inch wide and super, super defined. It just doesn't happen. I mean, this is not real life.
They tell us that the rays are straight when they're trying to prove curvature with Eratosthenes and his sticks. And then they tell us that it curves when they need to explain the eclipse.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's ridiculous. Did you see, I think it was in that video, they showed supposedly a picture of the shadow of the moon during an eclipse in Mexico. Was that in that video?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and supposedly that's a real shot. That's a real camera shot.
It's complete and total nonsense is what it is.
It's the big black shadow. I know. And yet, this penumbra and unumbra is supposed to have you're supposed to have one area that's like shaded and then the dark area according to their diagram. But it's never like that. It's like bright and sunny in one spot and then boom, it goes black. And then it's bright and sunny again.
Do you know how I always knew that there was some importance for a solar eclipse? Because I remember some of them when I was a kid. There was at least one, maybe two. What is the main thing they tell us on the news during a solar eclipse? Don't look at it. And so what do? I looked at it. You go blind. Blind. I'm the only one in my family that doesn't wear glasses. Maybe it's because I looked at the eclipse.
I've heard it all my life. You got to wear these little glasses. Don't look up at it. I fully intend to look up at it this year. I'm going to put some sunglasses on, obviously, but
I'm going to sun gaze at the whole thing without blinking.
Yeah.
So either I'll be blind or I'll have excellent vision when it's over.
Well, I think one thing that we could encourage listeners to do for those who are out there trying to spread the word of the flat earth, I think it would be a great thing if we all started maybe in the 10 days prior to the solar eclipse. If everybody started politely and kindly emailing their local meteorologist and saying, hey, I'm looking forward to the solar eclipse. Reading up on this, I realized that it's going the opposite direction. To my amazement, I can't find a single animation online that explains why the shadow is going from west to east. Could you help me out here? I think it would make a great segment on your show next week when dealing with the eclipse, because all of these shows are going to do like a little, local news are going to love to do stories on this. So if you're in an area, especially if you're in an area that is in that path, call your meteorologist, ask them, don't go barking flat earth at them. Just get your foot in the door. Just let them look into it for themselves. Can you, all the animations I've seen are wrong. They go the wrong way, or the sun moves, or the moon goes too fast. You think you guys over the station could actually make a model and settle this for us?
Here's the problem. As I said earlier about making sense of everything that happens, everything that you see and experience, you have to make sense of it. So when you're talking to somebody that has no idea that flat earth is even a possibility, they will make up something. They will go to there's no boundary on what they will say to make sense of it. They'll just make stuff up. I see it all the time. People defending the globe, they have to defend it, and they'll say the most ridiculous things. And that's what we're getting so far. There is a response video to that, which is it's just a horrible cartoon that has no reality to it.
Yeah, the one, are you talking about the one that the guy responded, and it looks obviously like the light source is moving left to right?
Yeah, they have the sun moving massively, and we're told that the sun moves because of the Earth's spin.
That's right. The sun basically, of course, it's rocketing around the rest of the universe at all kind of ludicrous directions and speeds. But in relation to us, it's sitting still in the middle, and we're going around it, and that's why it moves in the sky. But in that animation that someone answered with, it was obvious what they were doing, and they were also using multiple light sources in order to get that little bitty tiny shadow. I don't know. It seems like we may have stumbled upon one where, you're right, Dave. They can reach and they can grasp and they can pull things out of their rear end as far as like just coming up with things and saying things. But to really address this and say, you know what, make me a model that keeps everything in mind, that doesn't make the sun move, that doesn't speed up the moon, that doesn't reverse the direction of the earth. Show me a model of how this can happen. This really could be one of those Achilles heels for the heliocentric side.
Right. The heliocentric model says that the Earth is spinning. So the sun is essentially stationary from our point of view. It spins, it goes all the way. It appears that the sun goes around every 24 hours because we spin once every 24 hours. At the same time, the moon is orbiting the Earth, but it takes the moon relative to the sun's position. So the Earth is spinning and the moon takes 28 days to go around us, which are these two totally different motions. But on the flat Earth model, it's much simpler. The sun and the moon do a lap every day. The moon is just a little bit slower. So the moon is doing the same lap as the sun. It's just going a little bit slower. So the sun overtakes the moon. And if you look at that model, get your lights and your balls out and your table and model it, you can model that eclipse going in the proper direction.
Yeah, I read one comment from the Globe side on one of those videos that the guy said, "Oh, come on, you know, guys, think about it. Haven't you ever seen an airplane flying with a shadow?" And I said, he said that the moon's speed is actually going so much faster because it's making a larger circle, right? And so even though to us on the little Earth, it looks like it's going really slow. In fact, no, it looks like it's going the other way to me because the moon follows the sun's path. But he says that's because we're spinning. And he said the shadow is going to move the exact same speed as that moon. So it's really going very fast, which is why it's going to go west to east. I read it like 3 times and I'm like,
that's ridiculous.
First of all, this makes no sense. But I wanted to say, dude, have you ever seen the shadow of an airplane on the ground going 500 miles an hour? It doesn't go, the shadow does not move 500 miles an hour. It moves at the speed that your eyes see the plane moving across the top of the sky.
Huh.
Isn't that correct?
Don't know. I haven't really seen the airplane shadow go. I've seen a couple of them pop by, but I've never analyzed how fast
they're going to go the same speed that you see the plane in the sky moving. The shadow will not move at 500 miles an hour, or you wouldn't see it. It would go and zip by.
Okay, I'll have to look at that one for sure.
Yeah, a little bit confusing, but yeah, take a look at that. One other point that I wanted to bring up that I think people really ought to be looking into is a phenomenon known as the Missouri Gravity Low. 3 words, and the last word is low, L-O-W. It's a phenomenon that has to do with an area in North America, in the United States, the continental U.S., where there's a certain spot where they say has lower gravity, right? And they've measured this by measuring electromagnetic readings. So something is off in this little spot. And again, I don't believe in the force of gravity. I believe in the electromagnetic and electric universe and that sort of thing kind of having a lot more to do with it. And I hope that we can all figure this out very soon. But what I found really, really interesting, and I think everyone should take a look at this. If you go on Google, type in Missouri Gravity Low, and then you'll see a bunch of articles or links, but go to images and find a map that shows this area. And with the exception of one spot in the northwest of the U.S., this is the identical line of our upcoming solar eclipse path.
So the gravity low is a strip across the United States?
Yes. Coincidentally, with the exception of I think gravity low, they have the line starting in Washington instead of Oregon, but then it meets up right where
is it all of the time or is it?
This is all the time.
Change?
The article I was reading about it was from the 80s, but yeah, I think it's something they don't quite understand, probably because nobody has looked at it from the perspective of a flat Earth and the sun being a positive or negative energy that goes around in an electromagnetic universe. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They've never looked at it from these eyes, but I got to think that there's something to this. Well, maybe
If gravity,
from, Globebusters or something.
Right. If gravity was a thing due to mass, then this gravity low wouldn't exist. It would be impossible.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll make up something in the center of the Earth that causes it. I mean, you know, that's what they typically do. Like you say, they make up something else just to explain their, you know, it's like dark gravity and everything else, where they make up something to explain the holes. But here we've got an area right across the U.S. that matches the upcoming totality path almost exactly, like 90% exact. And it makes me wonder, if you looked into it, like, do they have areas in Asia that are also, is there an Asia gravity low? And if we had a map of that, would that also be the path of other eclipses?
I wonder, have you seen all of the total eclipse paths from the past? They're all over the place on the map, but if you put them on a flat Earth map, they make a nice circle.
Oh, yes. As far as the shape of their path, the shape of their path always does that little squiggly line, like
that up down nonsense.
The arching up,
like
and
the
then the arching
like
down.
the flight paths, like the
flight paths.
But
yet,
but you look at them on a flat Earth, right? They make a beautiful circle.
Yeah,
So-
same goes. I'm just wondering, this gravity low area, was this not just a result of the, you know, electromagnetic readings being thrown off in that area because that's the path of the sun?
Makes sense on a flat Earth. Doesn't make sense on a ball Earth.
Well, we'll leave that for everyone to look into. I definitely want to research it more. If you're the type of flat earther out there that is already into this and always looking for more things to dig into and learn about, somebody needs to get on this and do a video on the Missouri gravity low. I think there's potentially something really good in there.
All right, want to wrap it up? Do you have any final thoughts for this episode?
Final thoughts, man. Keep it flat. Keep it fun.
I say every sense you have tells you that you live on a flat, stationary plane, and only nonsense tells us otherwise.
That's good. That's good. You need to meme that, Dave.
I'm going to make a t-shirt.
All right, guys. We'll sketch you next week. We've got some upcoming interviews coming up on the podcast. Visit the website, the Flat Earth Podcast, Facebook page, everything else, and we'll see you next week.
And I find it unfortunate, me plus you plus her, that's 4. Math. Bring your worst and I'm gonna bring much more. Leave your nerves, your skirt both at the door.
The Flat Earth Podcast.